Hello everyone, I'm Pavni and today we will be having a conversation with Eliza and Alex from Lierpool Hope University, and we'll be conversing on sustainable business practices, delving into themes of religious and environmental movements in India along with consumerism and advertisement hopes. So let's begin. So Eliza, you're currently studying about sustainable business practices. So would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so my dissertation at the moment is on what would help people to reduce single-use plastic, and whether it's convenience or whether it's education, knowledge, social, what your friends do, like social influence, or whether it's like values and things like that. So it's been interesting to learn a bit about that, and relate it to people's shopping habits.
Yeah. And Alex, you're currently studying media and theatre, right? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I do two courses, so musical theatre, that's obviously looking at performing arts, and in terms of media, we look at how certain things around the world that are shown online impact us, and sometimes encourage us to think a certain way and make certain decisions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So talking about environmentalism largely, I would like to sort of put a contrary perspectives in front of the audience of India and UK. So a very regional theme that we'll be delving into.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how citizens largely view eco-friendly practices in UK.
So what we've noticed from being in here as well is that in the UK it's so frowned upon to drop litter or to not have a care for the environment. People will probably even lose friends over it. It's a really socially unacceptable thing to litter and not care about the environment. Whereas within the first couple of days of being here, we noticed people would just throw bottles out the window. In India, throw bottles out the window, or just litter around and things. So it was quite a shocking contrast. But yeah, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it was just very quite different seeing the amount of litter just on the ground everywhere. And we were on a bus and then we saw the landfills as well. And we were in England, I don't think I've ever seen a landfill, especially that big, full of all the rubbish, and it's just quite crazy. It seems like in India there's maybe a lack of knowledge about what just throwing things on the floor can do to the planet.
There's this lack of awareness going on. So also, since you brought up landfills, so would you like to talk about e-commerce and fast fashion and how that ties up with environmental issues?
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
So I think in England as well, with the more awareness, I think maybe slightly less so, I think people aren't as aware that our clothes and our fast fashion ends up in India and Africa and things like this. So I think that is something that needs to be more known about in England, that it's our actions that are affecting other countries. The landfill we spoke about earlier, I'm 99% certain has got clothes from people in the UK there as well. So if you want to talk a bit about the advertisements and stuff.
So in terms of advertisements, a lot of them online showed online shopping places to shop, such as Shein or Amazon or Pretty Little Thing or TikTok Shop even, which is again TikTok Shop's from the app TikTok, which advertises a lot, and we don't know where these clothes have come from, and it's not very sustainable shopping like that.
It's not.
And also how the things are being created and then shipped over. Whereas
because can I really want to just ask, because this relates, but so in England and probably in India as well, there's a big emphasis on the recycle. And what Alice was saying about how all the advertisement stuff, it's not focusing on the first thing of the 3 R's, which is reduce. Like a lot of advertisements are like buy more, buy more, buy more. And then now in England at least they're starting to say, but we'll recycle it, we'll recycle things. Like if you want to give it back, we'll recycle it. But it's not quite got to that point of maybe do you really want to buy this top, or like do you really want to buy this skirt? So it's quite tricky to like navigate like trying to be as sustainable as possible when all these businesses are literally just saying buy from us, buy from us, buy from us. And then to try and make it sustainable they say like we'll recycle it after, but they're not focusing on the first.
It's also like you see these brands like H&M and Marks and Spencer, and how they advertise with things like, you know, made from 100% sustainable material. And then you see that the largest dumping grounds that you have are filled with H&M and Marks and Spencer clothes. So it's just, you know, like you said, advertisement hooks. What are they? And then this drives the cycle of consumerism. And then so largely, I mean, in England, like you said, people frown upon if you just throw bottles. There's like so much awareness going around. But in India, largely there's this lack of awareness. So there's this nexus of this like political environmentalism going around the world, where there are certain countries which then become the dumping grounds of these first world nations, right? So also now, like you said, we'll be delving into the themes of religion and environmental movements. So in UK, have you seen, do you notice that if religion ties in some way or the other to environment?
I'd say for England it's less about religion and maybe more about class. So middle or upper class people tend to be more sustainable because they've got the money for it. So like a lot of people will still buy from Shein and Pretty Little Things because they're like, it's just cheap, it's just cheaper. Whereas the slow fashion is more expensive because there's more time put into it, you need to pay for that time. So I think it's less religion and more class. But I think when we were speaking earlier, like we were asking, we were shocked to hear that with India having such a religious population, that there wasn't that care for the environment, because in a lot of religions there is supposed to be care. So like, I don't know if you want to expand on
because largely you see that in cultures like Hinduism, they have, you know, to respect, I mean in every culture, even Buddhism, Jainism and Islam, all of them have this rich tradition to like respect food, respect the environment. Especially like in Jainism, they do not waste their food. And I have seen many friends of mine who will, even if the food is bad, even if they're so full, they will clean their plate entirely. They in fact rinse the plate and then drink that water. And so, you know, you see these habits, and then the kind of diet they have, the kind of way they live, the clothes they, so everything, I mean, it's highly respectable. And so also, you know, there's this practice in Indian culture to, you know, make pickles out of fruit scrapes or vegetable scrapes, and then to not produce a lot of food waste. And so now we see with these big corporations like McD or just any large corporation producing so much of food waste, and that's like an unhealthy culture that's been developing in many places, right? So what is your understanding of like environmental movements, and how do you see them?
So, do you want me to do this one?
You can start.
I'll start. So, well, you mentioned the
Save Hasdeo movement.
the
Chipko movement.
Yeah, the Chipko movement, and that was really interesting because that's to do with women like hugging trees and trying to like care for the environment in that way. And we've spoken a lot about differences between India and England, but in England we also have like, in my town, they were trying to chop all the trees down by the side of the roads, and our like women from our community would then climb up the tree, sit in the branch, and be like, you can't chop this tree down while I'm in it. So it was kind of like a similar protest. But yeah, I don't know if you want to expand on the Chipko movement.
I mean, I feel largely in India, the movements that we see are like grassroots movement, right? And so also like Save Hasdeo movement. So I think largely environment is more closely linked, and then people who also care about environment, there comes this class and caste division, especially in India. There's certain class of people who care about the environment because they're close, like you just said, there's like this class division in UK, right? So the same in India, but there's also the factor of caste. So a lot of Dalit and Adivasi communities are impacted directly due to loss of biodiversity or environment, because that's because they're so closely connected to it, and that's their primary form of sustenance. And so Save Hasde movement was primarily focused on that in Chhattisgarh, when the government ordered cutting the forest in Aranya region to build mining industries. And so the communities, the Adivasi communities, they protested, and so they actually did stop it, right? To a certain extent. So I think these movements have a lot of power. And do you feel that environment is political?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say.
Do you go or do you not?
What do you think, Alex?
I think there are more, like, some parties are more focused on sustainability. So we have like the Green Party, and the Green Party, they have more focus on the environment and trying to help it, whereas maybe the right wing parties are less so. Or I think what happens quite a lot in British politics is they will say that they want to help, but then when you go to the COP, the COP meetings, like nothing's getting done. Like England's not showing up how they're saying they would. But obviously that is different for each party. We've never had the Green Party in power as of yet. But certainly the other parties have said they want to do more, and the action's not been followed through.
Obviously, just more like the fact that the Green Party's never made it in to be the main party.
Says a lot.
It just means that it's not the main focus of what. Well, it just means that people are bothered about other things, maybe more than the environment. But I think that environment should be one of our key focuses.
Yeah, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people I think there's this sort of ignorance that goes around with environment. You feel like, there are trees, what's the use? And then you easily cut trees for development. But then what is development, right?
Yeah.
So, Eliza, you're studying sustainable business practices, right?
Yeah.
So, then again, because a lot of business models have to do with development and, profit and then capitalism and consumerism. So how do you put sustainability into that framework or model?
So, what we was studying recently is the 5 P's of sustainability. So it's profit, people, planet, and there's 2 more that I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's these 5 P's and you need all of them to be sustainable. And a lot of businesses just focus on profit, but you can't just profit and not focus about the people and the planet either, because then we'll get to a point where there's no people, there's no planet, so that profit's not important. So it's really like important to recognise that all of them matter, not just profit. But I think businesses have not had their eyes open to the fact that you need a planet and you need people for the profit to even mean anything.
So I think that's really important to look at, because even now many business like corporations, they say that they're following pro environment themes and models, but they're just not. And so, Alex, you are studying media and theatre.
Yeah.
How do you feel theatre and media can be like a tool for awakening people, or?
So we went to a university over in India, quite like a prestigious one. Last week,
SRM.
it was called SRM, and we watched this performance that the students were doing, and it's called Street Theatre, I believe. And basically they created this like song and dance, which they went and showed to the communities to try and make them more aware of recycling and not throwing away all their litter, and actually disposing of it in a sensible way. And I feel that that is a really good way of spreading awareness more of it, and I think the UK should do that more because we don't really have, well, we don't have street theatre, I think, in the same way as India does, maybe going.
I think
It's just in a different.
it's less educational. It's more performance.
It's more performance in the UK,
Yeah.
whereas it was really nice to see that that was more educational and teaching people. And again, with media, obviously, whatever's shown on the media impacts all of us very much, and what we see,
Yes.
we always think's the right thing, and it's not always telling the truth. So sometimes we may see certain
certain things that aren't being healthy to the environment.
Yeah.
And then that'll push you in that direction.
so
Rather than just
yeah.
seeing the positive
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Also, like, see street plays, like the other day we were having a conversation with Isabel, who's also doing a lot of theatre. So we discussed that how street plays have been used to mobilize the masses in India, right? Because ever since like very olden times, street plays are a form of resistance as well, and a form of social awareness. So I feel like, in that sense, India, I feel like people are utilizing that well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like the way you guys protest might be slightly different. Like, I know we said the tree hugging and stuff, but in England there's more like marches, so it's less the performance and it's more just like marches and speaking. But it is interesting to know that theatre and dance and things is part of your like way of saying what you want for the country.
I think it's more appealing to different forms of masses here in India, because people have like different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, right? So I think more of speaking or that like form of a very dialogue form of protest would not help the masses. So I feel like street plays fit right there. So Eliza, what do you think development is?
So I think there's probably like development probably comes in like a range of things. Like there's small development and there's like bigger developments and things. And it was really interesting. We were at a talk today actually, and it was quite clear. So someone said a talk about how they saw two people pushing a bike and it was like working together, and it's just so small, and like they were just pushing this bike up the hill, but they were both working together to achieve that. And I thought that's really interesting, like, that's such a small thing, but it's doing something good. But at the same time, the talk that we went to was about two partnerships and this collaboration between two entities, and that felt like that was development on a biggest, that would help development more broadly, whereas the two people pushing the bike was like helping, but just in a little corner. And like I read an article once that said like, as long as you can look after your little corner of the world and do your little bit, like develop what you can develop, and then whether it's big or small. So I do think like development comes in all shapes and sizes and things. So it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting take, and I think that would actually appeal to people on a much broader scale.
Yeah.
Right? And specifically in India, because people live in communities and they have like this shared experience of values and cultures, right?
Yeah.
So, but then also like I think state has a different term for development, right? A different definition of development. So I think like for state, development would be maybe cutting down trees and then building malls and sports arena and calling that development. So that's not development, because for whom is that, that development doesn't mean that you cut down trees to build places like malls and sports arena if that's not helping people, right? But it's not just to say, it's not like a blanket thing, right, that do not cut trees at all. If for example, if it's in a very secluded area and there's a community of people living and the girls there do not have access to schools or hospitals, and then you need to cut down trees to make that happen, then that's development, because it's actually linking people to some sort of social development, right? Some social progress. But then, so I feel that that definition needs to be looked at a very nuanced angle by these states people. Don't you think that? Like in UK, do you see that happening?
Also, I feel like it's one of those things, like if you solve one problem, you can create another one. So I think with that, I think the environment gets forgotten sometimes, like you were saying. So it's like to build sports facilities, you cut down the trees, but you know, even though sports is really important, fitness and all that, like the environment sometimes gets put as a second thing. So like, I definitely think there needs to be some discussion on how none of the like things get like left behind.
Yeah.
Can't think of a thing off the top of my head in England at the moment, but is there any in India?
I mean, yeah, most of the, like, even the Safe House there, it was like, the development was not for people, right? It wasn't benefiting the Adivasi communities living there. Even the Chipko movement, that was like, there's this just blanket usage of term development, that, oh, it's for development, we're cutting trees for development. It's been happening for like years, decades now. Even like the recent Hyderabad Central University case, you know, we're cutting down trees because you need to build this, you know, sports arena, anything, for example. So yeah, I feel like that needs to be looked into in a more better, understandable terms, right? So it was great talking to you.
Oh, yeah, you too, as always.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.